Hi, I'm Shannon Gavin Johnson, the director of Legacy Museum on Main, and this is a brief moment in LaGrange's history. During the Civil War, LaGrange and much of Georgia saw very little action until 1863. Besides the absence of the local men and war drives, the home front was fairly quiet. The late summer of 1863 changed that. In September of 1863, Confederate General Braxton Bragg evacuated the city of Chattanooga, Tennessee, including the Army of Tennessee's hospitals in that city under the command of Dr. Samuel H. Stout. In addition to the hospitals in Chattanooga, Stout also oversaw hospitals in northwest Georgia and Atlanta. As these cities were under the threat of attack from the Union Army now in Chattanooga, these hospitals had to be moved to locations west and south of Atlanta, including Newnan, LaGrange, and West Point. Since newspapers of that period have only sporadically survived, the information regarding the establishment of these hospitals is limited. On September 14, 1863, a brief note in Savannah Daily Morning News notes that a hospital would be established in LaGrange with room for 2,000 patients. Dr. Stout established some criteria for selecting cities and towns in which to locate hospitals. These municipalities had to have railroad access, good water, empty space, adequate food, and also be distant from the battlefields. LaGrange met all these criteria, and it also had a dedicated group of amateur nurses, a group of ladies who called themselves the Nancy Harts. While many of these tales of the Nancys are firmly entrenched in legend, there is a mention of their work as nurses in the contemporary journal of Kate Cummings. Born in Scotland circa 1830, Cummings settled with her family in Mobile, Alabama. Inspired by the heroic work of Florence Nightingale, she organized women in Mobile and later set out on her own to serve the wounded and sick Confederates on the Mississippi-Tennessee border. She spent much time in Dr. Stout's hospitals, particularly in Newnan. In her journal, she wrote of traveling on the train outside of Opelika, Alabama, when it derailed in August of 1864. On the same train was Senator Benjamin Harvey Hill of LaGrange, who informed her that the ladies of LaGrange had undertaken the care of the wounded left there, and his own daughter, a girl of 16, had special charge of 6. I was much pleased to hear this, and only hope that the ladies of Newnan will do the same. While there is a lack of historical detail pertaining to the local hospitals, according to Dr. Stout's papers, there were 5 hospitals in town. The specific locations of these hospitals are unknown. It is known that a hospital was located at the Southern Female College. This is confirmed in a brief appearing in Savannah's Daily Morning News, stating that the building was destroyed while the bedding, furniture, and things of value were saved. Following the fire, the Confederate government commandeered the Presbyterian Church and the dormitory of the LaGrange Female College, now known as Smith Hall, for use as hospitals. Historians list these locations as well as the basement of the Baptist Church and the buildings of the Brownwood Institute. The basement of the Methodist Church was also among the commandeered buildings, though its service was cut short after the laid plank floor was considered inadequate. A 1905 memoir by A.J. Miller from Texas, who was a boy during the war, describes the city as one vast hospital for sick and wounded soldiers. He goes on to say that all of the largest buildings were appropriated for this purpose, while a long and broad building was hastily constructed near the railroad, just above the present depot. Miller named several other buildings that served as hospitals, including Sterling's Hall, Keener's Furniture Store, as well as many storehouses. Enlisted men played important roles, but not all staff members were soldiers. Enslaved people were often pressed into service or hired from local slaveholders, and white civilians, including some women, provided additional care. The last contemporary mention of hospitals in LaGrange appears in Columbus's Daily Sun on September 30th, 1864. That article states that there are no more than 30 or 40 patients in the LaGrange hospitals, though more may be expected. The lack of information on this subject leads to the conclusion that the hospitals were likely moved elsewhere by the end of 1864. During the time that the hospitals operated here, nearly 300 soldiers died in the hospitals. They were buried in a small cemetery located southwest of downtown LaGrange and is now known as Mulberry Street Cemetery on Miller Street. To learn more about the Confederate hospitals in LaGrange, visit Legacy Museum on Main. This has been a brief moment in LaGrange's history.